Hello everyone, my name is Eric. I'm a limited licensed master social worker and psychotherapist. I've been working with children, youth, and adults for 10 years. Happy New Year to everyone, and welcome back to the Psych.osophy channel. Thank you for returning in 2026. This year, I aim to continue my weekly uploads of So You Want to Learn Psychology, where I talk about the books that have influenced my development as a psychotherapist. I'll also be starting another new series at some point this year, where I take a deep dive into particular mental health conditions and try to facilitate a better understanding of concepts like generalized anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, and the like, and give them a more descriptive clinical picture that does justice to the person experiencing the disorder, rather than strictly sticking with describing the diagnostic criteria out of the DSM. I wanted to begin this new episode with a test, something I found interesting. The video that I released on this channel on December 31st, titled New Year, Same Neurosis, Beating Your Unconscious Neurotic Patterns, was denied a promotion due to the mention of a specific political figure. I intended to spend a few dollars to have my video promoted this New Year, but I received an email stating that my request for the promotion had been denied. Why? I thought. I had never had any issues promoting videos in the past. The email stated the reason for my denial was due to, and I quote, election advertising in the United States. I found this strange because my videos are not overtly political, not even in the slightest. But I did, apparently, make the fatal mistake of mentioning a specific political figure, the current sitting president of the United States of America, by his last name. That was it. That was apparently enough to warrant a denial for my request for a promotion. So let me speak in plain language. I was going to pay YouTube $50 to promote my video, but because I said one word, they refused my money and denied my request. So, should this video get denied a promotion as well, I will be editing this portion of the video out and re-uploading it without this rant. But I wanted to bring it up because it's a very real reminder that even major corporations like YouTube do not stand for free speech or freedom of expression. And so with that being said, I will have to tread somewhat lightly from now on. I want to emphasize that I despise politics wholeheartedly, because I am convinced that 99% of politics are merely symptoms and anything but a cure for social evils. About 50% of politics is definitely obnoxious inasmuch as it poisons the utterly incompetent minds of the masses. We are on guard against contagious diseases of the body, but we are exasperatingly careless when it comes to the even more dangerous collective diseases of the mind. The next book in the series is Carl Jung's final volume of his collected works, The Symbolic Life. This book is essentially a massive collection of previously unpublished lectures and writings that took place throughout his life and career. Each chapter is dedicated to one of the previous books in his collected works, but what fills these pages is the supplementary material that sometimes did not make it into the final editions of those books, for one reason or another. Practically, what this means for us is that much of the continuity of these quotes is lost due to the diversity of the topics discussed therein. One quote might be about psychotherapy, the next about philosophy or politics or religion or the psychogenesis of mental diseases. With that being said, I want to present some of the insights from Jung's life in a coherent fashion, so I'll put them in the context of myself working as a psychotherapist. I once worked with a patient suffering from a persistent low-grade depression associated with a bipolar II diagnosis. He was a young man who left his relatively comfortable job to start his own business. He thought that the reason for his unhappiness was that he was caught in the grips of a life that was handed down to him, to which he had no other escape from other than to create something new, something of his own. After his suicide attempt, he came to me seeking psychotherapy, with the rather ambiguous goal of figuring out what's wrong with me. We can all relate to this guy a bit, can't we? When we know there's something wrong, but we can't figure out what it is, we naturally seek understanding. 6 months or more of weekly psychotherapy had passed with no subjective improvements in his feelings or mood. He was a thinking type, no doubt, and introverted to the core. Many of our discussions reflected on the topic of meaninglessness and the feeling of emptiness and shame for having been given a life that he did not create of his own accord. There had been more than a couple occasions where I asked him if he thinks coming to therapy is helpful, to which, at almost every occasion, he responded, "I don't know." A few times he even said, I think I come here because I feel like I'm supposed to. Isn't that what society says, that men should be in therapy? It is unmistakably a false conviction that every man needs psychotherapy. The pop psychology and therapy culture cult of today make it seem like going to therapy and having a therapist means you're a good person. It makes me reflect on the antidepressant commercials where everyone, after having taken their appropriate pill, is now smiling with the brightest, whitest smiles, reading books with their children and laughing, and seeing the sun shine through their windows again. How laughably inaccurate a picture of mental health. It almost makes me mad how commercialized and sensationalized mental health treatment has become. I guarantee you that nobody on antidepressant medication feels that way or looks like that. To come back to my patient. After about 9 months of therapy, we had exhausted all of our options. We had worked with CBT for depression, psychodynamic, insight-focused psychotherapy, existential psychotherapy, solution-focused brief interventions. You name it, we tried it. I had the confidence that he would no longer contemplate ending his own life in spite of his difficulties, but we never really got any closer to figuring out what's wrong with him. And now that I think about it, that's okay, because it certainly wasn't for me to discover, and for him, it may have not been the right goal or the right time. Jung says, I naturally do my best for my patients, but in psychology, it is very important that the doctor should not strive to heal at all costs. One has to be exceedingly careful not to impose one's own will and conviction upon the patient. We have to give him a certain amount of freedom. You cannot wrest people away from their fate, just as in medicine you cannot cure a patient if nature means him to die. Sometimes it is really a question of whether you are allowed to rescue a man from the fate he must undergo for the sake of his future development. We only gain merit and psychological development by accepting ourselves as we are and by being serious enough to live the lives we are trusted with. We mutually decided that to terminate treatment would be the best decision. I fulfilled my duties of our relationship by being there in a time of crisis and providing a helping hand and a listening ear. He fulfilled his duties in coming to sessions and speaking his mind about his issues and feelings. We both lended ourselves to each other in a therapeutic way, and despite not figuring out what was wrong, we successfully strengthened our own beliefs in each other. I helped bring him back from the brink in a time of crisis, and he helped me recognize that sometimes that is enough, and the rest of his life could be left up to him. We speak of resistances in psychotherapy, when therapy gets stale, monotonous, or it feels like it's going nowhere. Initially, if there's a limited interaction in the beginning of treatment, there may be some resistance at play, but there was none of that here. It was only towards the end of the 9-month period of treatment that things got decidedly dry. The psychological landscape of our conversations became barren and empty, and resulted in our weekly Sunday meetings becoming a sad waste of an hour for both of us. I did make it perfectly clear that the social pressure for men to go to therapy and figure out what's wrong with them played a huge part in the dashing of his expectations for treatment. He came to therapy thinking that by next year, he would have himself all figured out. He's a 27-year-old man, and even the most intellectual and mature 27-year-old is still a fledgling in terms of their understanding of themselves, psychologically and spiritually. I'm a 32-year-old man, and I'm still in the midst of my own personal psychological and spiritual development, so it's not lost on me how delusional that belief was, but I hadn't the authority to determine the validity of his own personal goal. I also made it clear that I would still be willing to see him in the future should he desire to come back to therapy, and he still has my number. But, with the final session, it was as if I had just let my own little bird fly from our nest. His fragile wings appeared strong as he walked out of the office on that snowy Sunday afternoon. I felt this quote from Jung ring in the back of my mind. It eloquently describes the process which we were just engaged. As anyone who is in a bad odor with himself feels need of improvement, anyone who, in brief, wishes to grow must take counsel with himself. Unless you change yourself inwardly too, outward changes in the situation are worthless or even harmful. It is not enough to jump up, puff yourself out, and shout, "I take responsibility." Not only mankind, but fate itself would like to know who promises to take this weighty step and whether it is someone who can take the responsibility. We all know that anyone can say so. It is not the position that makes the man, but the man who does his work. Therefore, self-searching, with the help of one or more persons, is, or rather should be, the essential condition for taking on a higher responsibility, even if it is only that of realizing the meaning of the individual life in the best possible form and to the fullest possible degree. Nature always does that, but without responsibility, for this is the fated and divinely allotted task of man. It never was my responsibility to figure out what was wrong with him. That was his goal. This is his life, and it's his responsibility. We are both unsure about our own abilities, but we are confident in each other that we will be able to take on the responsibility of our own psychological development and personal growth. At first, what felt like a failure to me now feels like the right move, in terms of giving my patient back his life after 9 months of fruitless pseudo-dependency, which, in retrospect, was the essence of his neurotic pattern from the very beginning. He was handed everything he had, his house, his job, and nothing was of his own creation until he started his new business. On occasion, he would say to me, "Sometimes I wish you would just tell me what to do." I now think that our mutual decision to end treatment is a sign that he was ready to take responsibility for his own life, and that it is now in his hands. The people who fancy that they are sure of themselves are the ones who are truly unsure. Our life is unsure, and therefore a feeling of unsureness is much nearer to the truth than the illusion and bluff of sureness. In the long run, it is better adapted man who triumphs, not the wrongly self-confident who is at the mercy of dangers from within and without. Measure not by money or power, peace of the soul means more. That concludes this episode of So You Want to Learn Psychology? I hope you enjoyed. I welcome you into 2026 and hope that this year provides you with ample opportunities to grow and continue your journey on the road of psychological development and self-understanding. If you are a practicing psychotherapist or in school to become a therapist, let me know in the comments. I would love to discuss further topics with all of you in the community. If you're someone who watches these videos and feels seen by them, then thank you for being a part of the community, and let your voice be heard down in the comments below. I appreciate all of you, regardless of how or why you engage with this channel. Thanks again for your support. Until next time.